You know how London gets in late September. One minute the sun is out, making everything look like a postcard. The next, the sky turns the color of an old bruise, and the wind comes whipping down the mall like it's personally offended by your jacket choice. I was there that day, not as a reporter, not as some royal superfan with a Union Jack tattoo. I was just there. My niece, Ellie, had just turned 9, and she was going through that phase where she believed princesses were real in the same way she believed gravity was real. You couldn't argue with it. So my sister and I took her to London for the weekend. Buckingham Palace was the main event. We got there around 11 a.m. The crowd was the usual mix. American tourists in mismatched rain ponchos, a school group from Japan all wearing the same blue caps, a few old-timers who looked like they'd been standing in the same spot since the Jubilee. Ellie was clutching a small plush corgi she'd bought from a gift shop. She kept holding it up toward the palace gates, like the real corgis might see it and invite her in for tea. The changing of the guard hadn't started yet, but you could feel the electricity. That specific London energy where thousands of strangers all hold their phones up at the same angle, waiting for something that looks exactly like the picture on their hotel room wall. I remember the smell. Popcorn from a cart near the Canada Gate. That wet gravel smell after a light drizzle. And somewhere underneath it, the old, dusty scent of the palace itself, like a history book left open in a library for 200 years. The King's Guard were already in position. You've seen them 1,000 times on social media. The tall black fur hats that look unbearably heavy. The red tunics. The faces like carved stone. They stand there as the world moves around them. Screaming kids, barking dogs, grown men trying to make them laugh for a TikTok. They don't blink. They don't smile. They're not statues, but they play statues on television. The one closest to us was young, maybe early 20s, clean-shaven, with pale blue eyes that stared straight ahead at nothing. His name, according to the little info plaque nearby, didn't matter. He was Guardsman Welsh of the Coldstream Guards. That's all I knew. Ellie was pressing her face against the cold iron fence, her little fingers wrapped around the bars. "Where is she?" she whispered. "Where's Charlotte?" My sister, Sarah, rolled her eyes. "She's not coming out, love. They don't just pop out for a wave." But maybe Ellie said hopeful. I was about to make some joke about royal schedules when I noticed something shift. Not in the crowd. In the guardsmen. Guardsman Welsh's eyes moved. It was tiny. A flicker. A micro-movement that most people would miss. But I've been watching him for 20 minutes, playing a private game of will he blink. And in that moment, his gaze slid to the left toward a small, gated side entrance about 50 yards down from the main visitor's gate. An entrance most tourists don't even notice because it's hidden behind a large planter of geraniums. Then he did something else. His gloved right hand, which had been resting flat against his rifle, curled slightly. Not a grip, but a readiness. Like a cat who hears a mouse in the wall, but pretends not to. I nudged Sarah. "Look," I said quietly. "At what?" "The guard. He's alert." Sarah squinted. "They're always alert. It's their job." But this was different. I'd seen the viral videos. The guard shouting, "Make way," at tourists who get too close. The stomp and the rifle swing. That's theater mostly. Performance for the crowd. This wasn't that. This was the silence before a storm. The kind of quiet that makes the hair on your arms stand up even though you don't know why. The crowd around us was oblivious. A man was eating a sausage roll with his mouth open. 2 teenage girls were taking a selfie with the palace behind them, laughing about something on their phone. Ellie was still pressed against the fence, her corgi dangling by one ear. And then I heard it. An engine. Low. Smooth. Expensive. A dark Range Rover, the kind that cost more than my flat, glided to a stop at that hidden side entrance. No sirens. No police outriders. Just the car, idling quietly, its windows tinted so dark they looked like mirrors. A footman in a waistcoat appeared from inside the gate. He opened the car's rear door, and out stepped a woman I recognized immediately, even from a distance. The honey blonde hair, the sharp cheekbones, the smile that never quite reached her eyes. Camilla, the queen consort. She was dressed in a forest green coat dress. Very tailored, very expensive, very present. She wasn't supposed to be there, I thought. The official schedule said she was at an event in Bristol. But here she was stepping out of the car with the easy confidence of someone who owns every room she enters, and half the ones she doesn't. She said something to the footman, who nodded and disappeared back inside. Then she turned and reached back into the car. A hand emerged. A man's hand, large, with a heavy signet ring on the pinky. My stomach tightened. I'd seen that hand before. In tabloids, in grainy photos taken at horse races and charity dinners. Tom Parker Bowles. Camilla. He unfolded himself in the car like a man who wasn't used to being folded. Tall, broad-shouldered, but soft around the middle. His hair was graying at the temples, cut short and neat. He wore a navy blazer, no tie, and the kind of leather shoes that cost £1,000 and looked like they cost 40. He didn't look happy. His jaw was set. His hands were shoved in his pockets. As Camilla spoke to him, he shook his head, once sharp, like a horse flicking away a fly. Then he said something back, and his mother's smile vanished. Just for a second. Then it was back, plastic and perfect. I couldn't hear the words. I was too far away, and the crowd was buzzing. But I could read body language, and Tom's body was screaming something ugly. He walked ahead of her through the side gate. A palace aide tried to hand him something, a clipboard, maybe, and Tom waved it away without looking. The aide stumbled back, nearly dropping the clipboard, his face flushing red. "Who's that?" Ellie asked, tugging my sleeve. "Nobody," Sarah said quickly. "Just some man." But I kept watching, because Guardsman Welsh was watching too. His head hadn't turned. His eyes hadn't left that invisible point in the distance. But I could feel his attention like a beam of light. Everything in him was focused on that side gate. The palace courtyard beyond was mostly empty. A few gardeners in brown overalls. A woman pushing a cart of linens. And then, coming from the opposite direction, near a door that led to the private royal apartments, two small figures appeared. One was a woman in a navy blue dress. One of the nannies, I realized, the famous Spanish one with the martial arts training. The tabloids loved her, and holding her hand was a little girl. Blonde hair in a neat ponytail, a dark pink cardigan over a white collared shirt, polished black shoes. She was skipping slightly, the way kids do when they're trying to be patient, but their bodies won't let them. Princess Charlotte, 9 years old, the same age as my Ellie. My heart did something strange then. A little lurch, because she looked so ordinary, so small, just a kid, walking through a courtyard, probably on her way to some lesson or some photo op she didn't ask for. She was laughing at something the nanny said. Her head was tilted back, her mouth open. A real laugh, not a royal wave laugh. The kind of laugh that happens when you forget people can see you. Ellie saw her at the same moment I did. "Charlotte," she screamed, so loud that half the crowd turned. The little princess didn't hear. She was too far away, behind the gates, behind the walls. But I saw her let go of the nanny's hand and start running a few steps ahead, her ponytail bouncing. She was heading toward a small garden area, a patch of roses. There was a wooden bench there, and on the bench was a tabby cat, one of the palace mousers, probably. Charlotte loved cats. Everyone knew that. She was almost at the bench when Tom Parker Bowles rounded the corner. He didn't see her at first. He was walking fast, head down, muttering to himself. His mother was still behind him, talking in a low, urgent voice. The courtyard was narrow there, between a hedge and a stone wall. Not much room. Charlotte stopped running when she saw him. She was a well-trained child. She knew to step aside for adults. She pressed herself against the hedge, waiting politely for him to pass. But Tom didn't pass. He looked up, saw her, and for a moment I thought he would just nod and keep walking. That's what a normal person would do. A child is in your way. You say, "Excuse me." You step around. You go on with your day. That's not what happened. Tom stopped directly in front of her. He was a big man, and she was a small girl. The top of her head barely reached his belt. He looked down at her, and even from 50 yards away, I could see something shift in his face. Something dark. Something that looked like the tail end of a bad argument, looking for a new target. He said something to her. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw his lips move. His posture changed, shoulders forward, chin out. Aggressive. Charlotte took a step back. Her eyes went wide. She looked over her shoulder for the nanny, who was still 10 feet behind, distracted by her phone. Then Tom reached out. It was fast. A swipe of his hand. He didn't punch her. He didn't shove her. But he batted at the air near her face, or maybe at her ponytail, I couldn't tell, and his hand connected with her shoulder. Not hard enough to knock her over, but hard enough to make her stumble sideways into the hedge. Hard enough that a thorn from the rose bush snagged her cardigan and tore a small hole in the sleeve. Charlotte didn't cry. She was a Windsor. But her face crumpled. That terrible, heartbreaking pre-cry face that all parents know. The bottom lip pushed out, the chin quivering, the eyes filling with water that she was trying very, very hard not to let fall. And Tom Parker Bowles laughed. A short, sharp, mean laugh. The kind of laugh that says, "What are you going to do about it?" Camilla saw it happen. She was only a few feet behind. Her hand flew to her mouth. She started walking faster, her heels clicking on the stone. She called out something, his name, probably, Tom. But her voice was quiet, uncertain, and that's when the world stopped. Part 2. The longest walk I didn't hear the footsteps. Nobody did, because the crowd was too loud, and my own heartbeat was too loud, and the sound of 1,000 tourists taking photos was a constant white noise. But I saw him move. Guardsman Welsh. He didn't run. That's important. Royal Guards don't run unless someone's dying. They walk, but they walk with purpose. The kind of walk that makes people get out of the way without being asked. He stepped off his post. That alone made a woman near me gasp. "He's moving," she said, like she'd just seen a statue come to life. His rifle was still in his right hand, held at an angle now. Not raised, not aimed, but not relaxed either. His left arm swung at his side, his gloved fingers curled into a loose fist. He walked through the side gate. No one stopped him. No one questioned him. He was a guardsman. He belonged there. Inside the courtyard, Tom had turned away from Charlotte. He was facing his mother now, his arms spread wide in a "what did I do" gesture. Camilla was talking fast, her face pale, her hands fluttering like trapped birds. The nanny had finally noticed. She was hurrying towards Charlotte, her phone shoved in her pocket, her mouth opening in shock. But Guardsman Welsh was faster. He crossed the courtyard in what felt like 3 seconds. The gravel crunched under his boots. The noise made Tom turn, and there they were, face to face. Tom Parker Bowles, 50 years old, son of the Queen Consort, food writer, aristocrat, and a 22-year-old guardsman whose name I would never know. Tom looked confused at first, then annoyed. He opened his mouth to say something, probably something about knowing his rank, knowing his place, knowing who he was talking to. He never got the chance. Guardsman Welsh stopped 6 inches from Tom's face. He didn't shout. He didn't raise his rifle. He just stood there, his blue eyes locked on Tom's brown ones. His breathing was steady. His jaw was set. And then he spoke. His voice was low, so low that I couldn't hear the words from where I stood. But I could see the shape of them. Short sentences, sharp consonants. Later, someone who was closer told me what he said. A palace cleaner who'd been emptying bins nearby. She said the guardsman's first words were, "You will not touch a child on this ground. Ever. Do you understand me?" Tom's face went red, then white. He tried to step around the guardsman, but Welsh moved with him, blocking him like a mirror. "I'm a guest of the," Tom started. "I don't care who you are," the guardsman said, and his voice rose just enough that I caught the next words. "On these grounds, I answer to the king. Not to you. Not to her." A tiny jerk of his head toward Camilla. "To the king. And the king's grandchildren are under my protection." Camilla stepped forward then. Her composure was cracking. "Guardsman," she said, her voice tight, "this is my son. There's been a misunderstanding." The guardsman didn't look at her. His eyes never left Tom's. "There is no misunderstanding, ma'am," he said. "I saw what he did. So did 30 cameras and 200 witnesses." He was right. The palace had security cameras everywhere. Little black domes on every wall. And behind the gates, a dozen tourists with zoom lenses had started filming. I saw a man with a massive Canon camera lowering it from his eye, his mouth hanging open. Tom took a step back. His hands were shaking. He looked at his mother, then at the guardsman, then at the little girl who was now being held by her nanny, her small body trembling. "This is absurd," Tom said, but his voice cracked on the last word. The guardsman shifted his rifle slightly. "Not a threat, a reminder. You will leave the palace grounds now," he said. "You will not return today. If you attempt to enter again, I will place you under citizen's arrest for assault of a minor, and I will hold you until the Metropolitan Police arrive." Tom laughed. It was a nervous, hollow sound. "You can't arrest me. You are a civilian." The guardsman cut him off. "On royal property. I have the authority to detain any person who commits an offense in my presence. And I just watched you strike a 9-year-old child." The word strike hung in the air like smoke. Tom's mother grabbed his arm. "Tom, go. Now." For a second, I thought he would argue. His face was a battlefield. Rage, embarrassment, fear, all fighting for control. But then he looked past the guardsman, past the nanny, and saw Charlotte. She was staring at him, not crying anymore, just staring, with those dark Windsor eyes that have seen too much for a 9-year-old. There was no fear in her face now, just a quiet, steady disappointment. The kind of look that says, "I expected better from you, and I'm not surprised I didn't get it." Tom's shoulders dropped. He turned and walked back toward the Range Rover. He didn't run, but he walked fast. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets. His head was low. Camilla didn't follow him immediately. She stood frozen for a moment, looking at the guardsman. Then at Charlotte. Then back at the guardsman. "What is your name?" she asked quietly. The guardsman finally looked at her. His expression didn't change. "Welsh, Mom. Coldstream Guards." Camilla nodded slowly. Then she turned and walked after her son, her heels clicking on the stone like a countdown. The side gate closed behind them. The Range Rover's engine started, and then it was gone. The courtyard fell silent. Guardsman Welsh stood there for a long moment, his rifle back at his side, his face unreadable. Then he turned, walked back to his post, and stood exactly where he'd been standing before. Like nothing had happened. But something had happened. And everyone who saw it knew they'd witnessed something rare. Something real. Ellie was crying. Not sad tears. I don't know what kind. She was just crying, her little face wet, her corgi crushed against her chest. "Did that man hurt her?" she whispered. I put my arm around her. "No, sweetheart." The soldier stopped him. "Good," she said fiercely. "Soldiers are supposed to protect princesses." Sarah and I exchanged a look. The kind of look that says, "We're going to be talking about this for years." The crowd around us was buzzing now. Phones were out. People were whispering, pointing, replaying videos. Within an hour, the story would be everywhere. Within a day, the palace would release a carefully worded statement. Within a week, most people would forget. But I wouldn't. Part 3. The Hat We stayed for another hour. I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping to see something else. Maybe I just didn't know how to leave after what we'd seen. The changing of the guard happened on schedule. The band played. The horses clopped. The tourists cheered. Life went on. But every few minutes, my eyes would drift back to Guardsman Welsh. He never moved. Never blinked. Never showed a single sign that he'd just done something extraordinary. The afternoon sun came out from behind the clouds, and his shadow stretched long across the gravel. A pigeon landed on his bearskin hat. He didn't flinch. At one point, a little boy dropped his ice cream near the fence and started wailing. His mother scooped him up, apologizing to everyone around her. The sound carried across the courtyard, and I swear, I saw the corner of Guardsman Welsh's mouth twitch. Just a fraction, just for a second. Then it was gone. Ellie tugged my sleeve one last time before we left. "Can I give him something?" she asked. I didn't know what she meant, but she reached in her little backpack and pulled out a small bag of Haribo Gold Bear she'd been saving for the train ride home. She held them up to me, her eyes serious. "For being brave," she said. "I should have said no. You can't give candy to a royal guard. They're not supposed to accept anything. It's against protocol. It's probably against the law, somewhere in some dusty book of royal regulations." But I didn't say no. I walked Ellie to the edge of the fence, as close as we could get. She held the bag of gummy bears through the bars, stretching her arm as far as it would go. "Excuse me," she whispered. "Mr. Soldier." Guardsman Welsh didn't move. "For you," Ellie said. "For protecting the princess." Silence. The band played on. A woman behind us sneezed, and then so slowly that I almost missed it, Guardsman Welsh's gloved hand moved. Just his pinky finger. It extended slightly, and then it curled back. It was nothing. It was everything. Ellie beamed. She set the bag of gummy bears on the ground just inside the fence, where a guardsman could pick it up later, or a pigeon could eat it, or the wind could blow it away. She didn't care. He saw me, she said as we walked away. He saw me, and he nodded. He hadn't nodded, but I wasn't going to tell her that. We got to the tube station before Sarah finally spoke. She stopped in the middle of the ticket hall, people streaming around us, and grabbed my arm. "Did that really just happen?" she asked. "Or did we imagine it?" I thought about it. The way Tom's hand had swiped out. The way Charlotte's face had crumbled. The way the guardsman had walked across that courtyard like a man walking toward his own execution, knowing he was right. "It happened," I said. Sarah shook her head. "They'll fire him, won't they?" The guard. He embarrassed them. He embarrassed Camilla. I wanted to say no. I wanted to believe that doing the right thing had a reward. But we both knew how the world worked. The powerful protect their own. Guardsmen are replaceable. Princesses are not. But I was wrong. 6 months later, I saw a news article. A small one, buried on page 12 of a newspaper I was reading in a cafe. It said that Guardsman Thomas Welsh had been promoted to Lance Corporal, and that he had been personally thanked by the Prince and Princess of Wales in a private ceremony. No details, no quotes, just a photo. A young man in a red tunic, standing next to a woman in a blue dress, shaking her hand. And behind her, half hidden by her mother's shoulder, a little girl with a ponytail, holding a tabby cat, smiling at the camera like she had a secret. I cut the article out. I still have it, tucked into the pages of a book I never read. Ellie is 12 now. She doesn't believe in princesses the way she used to. She's too old for that. Too smart. She knows that royalty is just a job, that palaces are just old buildings, that guardsmen are just men in funny hats. But sometimes when we're watching the news and something about the royal family comes on, she'll look at me and say, "Remember the soldier who wasn't scared?" And I always say the same thing. He was scared, Ellie. That's what made it brave. Because here's the thing about that day. Here's what I keep coming back to, even now, years later. Guardsman Welsh knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that stopping Camilla's son meant ending his career. He knew that embarrassing the queen consort's family meant making powerful enemies. He knew that the palace would rather sweep it under the rug than admit that one of their own needed protection from a guest. He did it anyway. Not for glory. Not for promotion. Not for a photo op. He did it because a little girl was standing in a rose garden, and a grown man had made her cry, and someone had to say no. That's the thing about ordinary people. We spend our whole lives looking for heroes in capes and crowns. We forget that most heroes wear wool tunics and heavy hats. They stand in the rain for hours. They don't get to go home until someone tells them they can. They watch the world go by, and they wait. And when the moment comes, when the line between right and wrong is suddenly terrifyingly clear, they don't hesitate. They just walk, one foot in front of the other, across the gravel, toward the trouble, ending line. You can train a man to stand perfectly still for 2 hours in a bearskin hat, but you can't train him to have a heart. That either comes with him or it doesn't. And on that September afternoon, one guardsman showed a palace and a crowd and a frightened little girl exactly what kind of man he already was.